Abruptly the rope tying the boat snaps. Also, the blast hits her square on the chest. This thumps her oblivious into the water, free for the sharks to benefit from. In the meantime, nearby, Charlie Brody moors his ocean plane someplace along a riverbank in the Gold Coast. Charlie runs a visit organization alongside his sweetheart, Cass, colleagues, and gives guests airborne visits over the extraordinary and Australian reef. Anyway, their business is in harm's way. Due to their mounting obligations, they routinely get calls from the banks requesting reimbursement following a lot of time work. The cars invest some heartfelt energy together inside their riverside home. Subsequently, they discuss their future plans and the condition of their business as Cass rubs her finger along her beau's legs. We can see a scar brought about by a horrendous shark assault there. Heartfelt second is interfered with by a call for Charlie. He gets inviting news that somebody needs to book a plane visit for the accompanying evening. Energized, he lets C know that the guests have contracted a trip over to Damnation's Reef and furthermore anticipate having lunch there the next day. The guests Joy Mattis and his significant other Michelle show up at the dock for their road trip after an abnormal presentation. 2 or 3 gets onto the plane alongside Charlie, Cass, and cook Benny, who appears to be fascinated by Michelle's excellence. Then, at that point, they take off to the beautiful Damnation's Reef. During the flight, Joy keeps on looking through of the window anxiously. Turns out he almost suffocated when he was a youngster, so he's frightened of the sea. Benny, also, the others notice his apprehension. Also, begin making fun of him. The cook recommends that there are sharks in the water who assault people anyway. Charlie solaces him by saying that sharks do not show up on the Gold Coast during this season. Cass adds that her sweetheart was a sea life researcher previously. He got the travel industry business. Not long after Charlie focuses on the scar on his leg, he uncovers that a shark gone after him from behind while he was exploring the submerged environment in the region. Talking for a fact, he cautions the guests to constantly know about their environmental factors. Soon they land close to a lovely island on Damnation's Reef and everybody lands the plane. Cass illuminates the guests that the spot is in reality called Majestic Reef, yet the local people call it Damnation's Reef in recognition of a delivery calamity many years prior, portraying the account of the catastrophe. She says just a single out of 18 individuals on board a boat endure that critical mishap. Incredibly, Michelle uncovers that the last one standing was her late granddad, Pike Morita. Benny additionally tolls in on the discussion. What's more, says that the occurrence occurred on the 12th of October, 1951. Amazed, Michelle inquires as to whether he knows about the occurrence, and that's what he answers. Her granddad is a legend around the Gold Coast. Following this, Michelle uncovers that she came to the island to satisfy her granddad's final request on this earth. He maintained that his remains should be scattered in the same waters where the mishap killed his shipmates. She, alongside Joy, strolls towards one corner of the island while Benji sets up a shoddy kitchen for lunch. Meanwhile, Cass and Charlie go for a walk by the shore where they notice a crowd of dolphins. Overpowered by the wonderful second, Cass uncovers that she is pregnant. The couple then, at that point, chooses to get hitched after they get back from the outing anyway. Their cozy second is intruded on by Benji's mad yelling. He tells them to race to the guests rapidly. When the triplet arrives at the guests, they find Michelle in tears. Joy calls attention to that his better half saw a horrendous sight close by. Certain enough, Cass and Charlie track down a rotting human body whose leg has been gnawed off by sharks. This body has a place with the man whom we found in the primary scene. While Charlie is upset by the sight, his Spouse advises him that they should get the guests from the island. She then tracks down a cell phone close to the body which contains a photograph of the dead man and his sweetheart. Next, Cass shows the telephone to her beau. They peruse it and find photographs of the man, his better half. Also, their beau Joy says that they ought to pass on the circumstance to the specialists. In any case, Benji contends that they ought to look for the missing boat and check for any survivors. After a short contention, Michelle persuades her significant other to look for the missing boat. Consequently, with a 45-minute stock of gas, the gathering takes off on a salvage mission. Sooner or later, Michelle sees an automated boat drifting in the ocean and illuminates the others. The plane grounds close to the upswing boat and the group assesses the site. Since Charlie is the one in particular who can fly the airplane, Benny chooses to look for any potential survivors. He plunges under the water and searches the rubble of the boat. Out of nowhere, a half-eaten body of a young lady floats behind him. Cracked out, he rapidly swims back to the surface. What's more, moves up the ocean plane, understanding they won't track down any survivors here. The gathering at long last chooses to leave. Anyway, things get really ugly at the point when a Goliath extraordinary white shark swims headfirst and into the plane. The strong influence penetrates the lobby and the plane starts to sink simultaneously. Benji harms his arm and falls into the water. Anyway, he has sufficient sound judgment to send the elastic raft following. Charlie dispatches a trouble approach the plane's radio. Everybody gets on the raft as fast as conceivable. The gathering watches hopelessly as the plane gradually sinks, submerged in the fallout of this assault. They figure out that the security reference points used to ready salvage missions sunk with the plane. To add to the setback, Charlie doesn't know whether the misery call got communicated over the powerless radio transmission. They have drifted 75 kilometers away from the shore, and following several hours, the ocean momentum will take them further away. Charlie proposes that their most obvious opportunity of endurance is to paddle along the ocean current and attempt to arrive at land by the following evening. Anyway, they are uninformed about the enormous peril prowling underneath the surface. A couple of hours after the fact, the water ebb and flow takes the pontoon more profound into the ocean. Benny lets Charlie know that the shark probably been no less than 5 m long. He then, at that point, consoles his companion that his arm is fine, and the two switch turns to paddle the pontoon forward. In the interim, Cass watches out for Michelle's head injury, and the two ladies banter. Michelle talks about her significant other and how the injury of almost suffocating as a youngster imparted a feeling of dread toward of water in him. He required a lot persuading to conquer his trepidation and visit Damnation's Reef with her. Amusingly, they turned out to be abandoned in the center of the sea. Cass then, at that point, uncovers that she met Charlie at the medical clinic. After his awful shark assault, the two have been together from that point forward. In the next scene, the camera works out and shows us the elastic pontoon floating gradually along the ocean ebb and flow. Unbeknownst to the gathering, two enormous white sharks float under the water surface, close the pontoon. In the meantime, Charlie estimates they still have 130 kilometers to come to the closest land. That evening, Joy stands up to Charlie for not letting him know the total truth. As an speculation examination, he ascertains that their possibilities of endurance are underneath 5%. Assuming that the shark actually hides close to them, Charlie takes a gander at him with miserable eyes and concedes that the hunter is still chasing after them. During the night, they alternate paddling the pontoon individually while the others rest. Depleted, Michelle nods off during her chance while her better half lines away on the opposite end. She awakens a couple of seconds Later just to find the oar slipped away from her hands. Overreacted, she illuminates the others, and the gathering restlessly watches the oar drifting a couple of meters away from their pontoon before her significant other can meddle. Cass tenderly drops into the water and starts swimming away to recover the oar. Coming back to the pontoon, the shark menacingly swims towards her. However, she barely evades being nibbled. A couple of hours after the fact, the weather conditions changes and downpour mists rapidly accumulate above. Charlie gives the ladies plunging suits to keep them warm in the event that a precipitation. Yet a harsh question emits at the point when Benny attempts to assist Michelle with putting the suit on. Joy goes up against him for endeavoring to play with his significant other and pushes him into the sea. Alarmed by the aggravation in the water, the extraordinary white shark rapidly swims to the spot and hauls Benny to his demise. Anguish takes over the excess individuals from the pontoon. Cass faults herself for being not able to save Benny while the others quietly sit. Anyway, a little later she gathers half a container of water from the downpour, takes a taste and passes it to the remainder of the individuals. In the meantime, Charlie views as first help packs and a blade in Benny's pocket. He guesses that on the off chance that he can draw near enough to the shark, he can strike a lethal blow between its eyes. Anyway, the monster strikes first as it slams the pontoon from under and sends them rambling into the ocean while every other person gets back into the pontoon. Joy isolates from the gathering. Michelle watches with sickening apprehension as the shark goes after her better half and kills him. The next day, Charlie understands that there is a cut in the pontoon due to the previous evening's assaults. He